Do you wonder sometimes that maybe, just maybe, people are right when they say that it's your fault that your child is being defiant? That maybe it's your parenting style that's causing the defiance? This is something that I hear from parents all the time where they'll say to me, it's not that I believe it, but sometimes I just second guess myself. Sometimes I'm just questioning, is it really true that it's not my parenting style that's causing this defiance? So my name's Jodie Thornton, and today I'm going to take you through what's really going on in those moments so that you can actually deeply know for sure that it's not your fault. So if we look at a couple of things here. One of the messages that we get about defiance, so we get the messages from the more traditional parenting approaches that will basically say that defiance is not acceptable and we need to do something about it to make it stop. Like we need to make sure our child understands that it's not appropriate behaviour. In the more progressive parenting styles, there's this sense that defiance is just a thing that happens and you just need to accept it. And in both cases, normally I will say we all understand why the traditional parenting approach isn't working anymore, and that the progressive parenting approach is like half the answer. In this case, I want to say they're both half right. So the half that is correct is that defiance is not a healthy, constructive behaviour. Now, that doesn't mean we want to stamp it out. What we want to do is help a child to move from defiance into really connected and open, direct, honest communication. And what that takes is having an understanding of why they're being defiant, having the skills to articulate that, and then also having the relationship to be able to move into constructive and collaborative approaches so that we're actually solving the problem rather than just focusing on, do I agree or not agree to let go of my defiance? And then I will also say, I said relationship to make sure that there's collaboration and more constructive approaches. We don't necessarily need both people to be brought in for this to work. So I'll get to that in a moment. So the first thing we want to talk about is the times where we feeling like they save up all their defiance for us. So if you're in this category where it's like your child is an angel for everybody else, but they save up the defiance just for you, that is often the case when we are the kind of person who is really considerate of our child as a person. So we're not, it's not so much that we're acquiescing to our child. Sometimes we might be. There can be some people, and also all of us some of the time, might be acquiescing. But more to the point that we actually feel like it's okay for our child to stand up for what they need. It's okay for them to need things just because they need them. It's okay for them to have big feelings about things. If that's the kind of approach we take in life, then often our child who doesn't get that everywhere else. So you might be lucky in that there might be a few people in your child's life who really respects them as a person. But it's really uncommon these days for a child to be surrounded by people that think like that. So what's most common is that whether it's educators at daycare, whether it is extended family, who knows, there's really, really common, excuse me one second, excuse me. It's really, really common for adults particularly to take the view that children should just acquiesce, or even we might think that yes, children, that they have needs and their needs matter, but at the end of the day, the adult makes the call, or also just not understanding the depth of a child's real experience in life. So that's a really, really common example. So when that's the case, whether it's your child's other parent, extended family, or daycare, wherever they are going, where there's other people that don't treat them with the same respect that you do, then they are more likely to really demand that of you. And it's not so much a demand in the sense of I can't be okay unless I have it, but it's more so I'm hungry for this and I don't get it anywhere else, so therefore I really, really latch onto it with you. And that's something that we want to be aware of. It's not so much that we want to the first thought is always, how can we change everybody else, right? And that's a long game. It's not going to happen overnight, right? We can't do that straight away. The second thought is that, well, then should I be treating them differently because other people are not going to treat them in the same respect I am? My answer is absolutely not. Like, obviously, some people would never question that, and some people will question it in the ultimate interests of the child, and sometimes we just question ourselves from time to time. But in any case, I say no. The more experience your child has of having a really respectful relationship where we're focused on working out what works for both of us, the better they will have everything. Like, their sense of self will be stronger, but also the amount of time they get to practice being respectful and collaborative, if you're the only source they have, all the more important that they get it, right? So that's the one thing. And then ultimately, instead of just like allowing the defiance to go ahead, in inverted commas, it's like what we really want to get to is what is in the way of the defiance. So what we want to work out is what is causing them to dig their heels in, and how do we solve the actual problem. So commonly, the issues we're talking about are the things that we cannot say, we kind of acquiesce about. So I was talking about teeth brushing, getting our shoes on to get out the door, needing to eat sometimes can be an issue. Like, there's lots of things where we have to make sure that they do these things. And so then there is a point at which we're like, you really get a say everywhere else, but this one I can't give you. And that's where it can kind of escalate. What we want to do is work out specifically what are they concerned about for this issue. If we use a teeth brushing example, it could be anything from, I don't like the sensation, I don't find it fun to do the activity, I don't want to go to bed, and if I brush my teeth, I'm one step closer to going to bed. Like, there's all sorts of things underneath, and we need to be precise about what is actually causing the defiance, and then we can solve the actual problem. And then all of it goes away, right? It's not so much that we go, okay, it's okay that they're defiant with me and not everybody else. It's more so, isn't it great that their true self is coming out with me? How do we then solve the problems so that it's no longer about defiance, it's actually just about connection and collaboration? So that's our first example. The second example I want to talk about is where you are overgiving, so you're always saying yes. Every time you can say yes, you're always going to say yes. And then when it turns around and it's something that you need and you've gotten to the end of your fuse, you're like, come on, you have gotten everything you needed. Can I not just get one thing, right? And it becomes this one really feels a little bit more like resentment. It's like, how is this such a one-sided relationship? And that's what I find is really unsettling for parents when they're in this situation, because they worry, am I setting this child up to be a person who cannot function in a two-way relationship? And really, it comes back down to the same issue, like solving the problem. But on this case, what we need to focus on more so is you getting clear on what you need. Because all of those times that you've said yes when perhaps you didn't really want to, the reason you've done that is because you're thinking, both of us can't get what we want, I may as well give them what they need because I can. But then when we get to the end of the rope, then it becomes, come on, kiddo. So what we need to do is come back to all those times that you're saying yes when you don't really want to, and look for what is the reason you don't want to say yes. And we look to solve the problem so that you can both get what you need rather than choosing whose turn it is to acquiesce. Now, the third example is one where our kid has picked up, because they're so astute, right? Our kid has picked up that your way of being in this world is that if once you are happy, once I've given enough to you and you're happy, then I will have enough space to get what I need and I'll be happy. And they wouldn't necessarily be conscious of this, but if they can see that your approach is always, I'm going to fill up my child's cup, and once they're finally full, then I'll sort myself out and then we'll both be happy. If they have picked up this sense, then what they are really just letting you know with their defiance is that, no, mum, I know that actually you're not happy unless I'm happy, and I'm not happy. So, like, we just need to keep going here because I'm not happy. Now, obviously, it's not in that tone. It's usually a much more angry tone because it's defiance. But you get what I'm saying here is that what they hear from you is that what they hear from you is that their happiness is so important to you. And therefore, if they're not 100% happy, then they're doing a service by letting you know. And again, we don't want to take down the path of, okay, well, actually your happiness is not that important to me. It is still important. But more so what we want to say is, again, why does one person need to acquiesce? And so often people will say, yeah, but sometimes we do. And it's true that there are times where we do have to make a decision that not both people are going to get what they need. But the vast majority of the time, with practice on getting clear on what you both need and practice at being creative at problem solving, the vast majority of the time you actually can solve the problem. And if you're solving it more frequently, then those times where there has to be a decision made of like, okay, this can't work for both of us, what decision are we going to make? Or even you as an adult might say, which decision am I going to make? Because we just don't have an option that works for both of us right now. Then they are more accepting of that situation. So even if you can't get a solution, I'm all the stumbly today, even if you can't get a solution to the actual issue, what happens is the defiance falls away. Because the two of you are focused on how do we get this to work for both of us, and if it doesn't work for both of us, they're no longer actually holding on to this, like, I have to be defiant in order to hold my ground, in order to look after myself, I have to be defiant. That just floats away once there is a basic pattern in your problem solving that we're focused on getting clear and finding a way. So this all might sound a little bit unrealistic or unachievable on a day-to-day basis, and I totally get that because it's a completely different way of thinking. And there's so many times where we think there actually isn't a solution to this problem that works for both of us when there is. And that's a factor of our culture giving us messages about, well, so many things, but one just being that our needs are valid. Like, our culture will tell us that your needs are only valid if there is an available way to meet them right in that moment, right? Like, watch for that around conversations with other people. It's like, if you don't have an easily accessible way to get that need met, then just don't have the need. Don't think about it. Don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. It's fine, right? That's something that we get taught from a very young age because it's throughout our culture. It's not just parenting, it's throughout our culture. And so many other things, right? So our culture has given us all of these disadvantages in coming together and solving problems. So we need to actually unpack how we think and change the way we approach problems with our kids. That's what I'm going to be focusing on on my webinar. I got that wrong, but you know what I mean. The webinar is called Getting Strong-Willed Kids to Listen. You can register for that one at jodithornton.com/listen. And we are going to be breaking down what do you need to do to really get clear on what the real reason is underneath the defiance. And then also being able to communicate to them about why it is that you have the need that you do, and practicing that problem-solving approach together. The benefit of getting this really down pat is that when you hear me talk about, and I'd love to hear if this helps, when you hear me talk about, this is why I know that your child is not defiant because of you, hearing it articulated the way I've done today hopefully has helped you to really take that on board. But while you're still having defiance with your child, it's really difficult to let go of questioning yourself. And once you get a really problem-solving practice embedded in how you work with your child, once that's just how the two of you work together, then you won't even be thinking about why they're defiant with me, because they won't be defiant with you. But also you just can stop questioning yourself because you know this is how we work together. You know that this is something that can be worked through. It's not something that we just need to accept. And mostly because we want our children to be constructive in their relationships with everybody. We want them to not just stick their heels in. We want them to be able to articulate, this is why I'm not going along willingly with what the other person needs. So Register for that at jodithornton.com/listen, and I would love to hear in the comments of this video if you have any questions or any ahas, like what was there something that really resonated with you. Thank you so much for having me as part of your village.